Hi everyone, you're welcome back to my channel. My name is Helen. So in my last video I demonstrated how you can create a Docker file as well as the Docker images and how you can use the image to run your Docker container. If you're yet to see the video, I'm gonna be dropping the link in the description below. I simplified the process and I believe you're gonna like that. So in this tutorial today, I'm gonna be demonstrating how you can create Docker volumes and bindmounts and persist your data in your Docker container. It's gonna be a very smooth process and I'm gonna show you hands-on how you can implement this, not just reading theory. Okay, and so before we go ahead, please, if you are yet to subscribe, kindly subscribe to this channel. Click on the notification bell so that way you get notifications each time I publish a new video, because I've got a lot to share in Docker and other DevOps tools as well as cloud computing. Alright, I'm actually ready. Let's get started. First of all, I'm gonna start by explaining how Docker stores files or stores data on local file system. So when you start your Docker or when you install Docker on your system, it creates a folder structure at /var/lib/docker, and inside this folder it has multiple folders under it, such as containers, image, volume, etc. So the var/lib/docker directory is the default location where Docker stores its data, including the aforementioned folders. Alright, so before we continue, let's understand how Docker stores its files and in what format. In Docker layered architecture, images are built in layers. In my last tutorial where I demonstrated how to create a Docker file, we had a specific number of Docker instructions, and Docker uses those instructions to build our image in layers. Okay, so if you have like 5 instructions in your Docker file, your layers will be 5. Alright, so let's continue. The files you have in your Docker image are read-only. By default, they are read-only. So that means you can't edit those files. You can only make a change or modify the file by rebuilding the image. Okay, so now let's talk about the Docker container. So the file you have in your Docker container is by default read-write. It's by default read-write layer, and you can modify the file in your Docker container, maybe by using docker exec command or stuff like that. However, any change you make in your Docker container will be lost. If the container is dead or something happened to the container, the data you have there will be gone, and it will be gone forever. Alright, so you don't want to have this story that touches the heart that you've lost your data or that your data is not persisting. You don't know, you always probably you're just practicing Docker, right? But if it's in a production environment or maybe dev environment where you really want to test stuff and you want the data to persist, you need a solution, and that is the solution we want to provide today, so you'll be able to persist your data in container. Okay, so because containers are ephemeral, meaning that they are short-lived, all right, we want to persist our data using volumes, using Docker volumes and bindmounts. Okay, so what is the better practice for doing this? A better practice is to use volumes or bindmount to persist data outside of your container. So if anything happens to your container, it can be the data can be retained. All right, so even after the container is stopped or removed, you can still have your data. Right, now what is a volume in Docker? A volume is a managed storage area that is created and managed by Docker. So volumes are designed to be independent of the container's life cycle, so they are not dependent on the container's life cycle. So when you create a volume, you can attach it to your container, and when the container is gone, or when you stop it, either when you stop the container or maybe the container crashed or it got deleted, the volume will still be available for other containers to use. All right, so Docker volumes are managed by Docker itself and are stored in a separate directory on the host file system, and they are usually stored under /var/lib/docker/volumes. So your volumes can be shared between containers, and they can also be backed up and restored. Now, what is bind mount in Docker? Because I'm going to be demonstrating this too in a moment. So in Docker, a bind mount is a way to mount a file or directory on the host machine into your container. So let's say you have an external storage, or you have a directory that contains a configuration file, and you want your container to have access to the file, and you also want whatever write that is being made to the container directory to be reflected on the host, so that your data can persist even when the container is gone. All right, so that way you use bind mount. All right, so I'm going to show you how this is being implemented. So first of all, I'm going to demonstrate how to mount a volume to your container, and secondly, I'm going to show you how to use bind mount. Okay, so the first step in mounting a volume to your container is to create a volume. But before we go into creating a volume, I want to show you this directory I've talked about. That is /var/lib/docker. All right, so I'm gonna type this. Okay, so inside this directory, I want to show you, okay, because if you come into this directory, you see other folders, all right, including the containers I mentioned, the image, the volumes. All right, so that is it for this directory. So we are interested in using these volumes directory. Okay, and the first step, like I mentioned, is to create a volume. Then we can now run our container and mount the volume to the containers directory. Let me clear this. So first of all, let me verify if I have some volumes here. So the command to check the volumes you have already is dockervolume ls. Press enter. I actually have like 4 volumes here. All right, so I'm gonna create a new volume by running docker volume create command. Then I'm gonna type the volume name, so demo volume. Press enter. This volume has been created. Let me verify. As you can see, demo volume is here. The driver is local. All right, so let me actually go to my home directory. Okay, all right, so what is the next step in this process? The next step is to now create our container. So I'll be using, I'm not gonna be using a docker file. I'll just make use of the official nginx image. So to clear my screen first, I'll be running docker run command here. Okay, so docker run -d to run this in a detached mode. All right, so the next command here will be --mount, because we want to mount a volume to our container, right? So I'll give space and I'll type source. What is the source? We've created a volume. All right, so the name of my volume is demo volume. So that is the source. That is what we want to mount. Okay, and I will give, I'm gonna type comma, without space I'll type target. So the target is the directory I want to create this in my container. All right, so target is to specify the directory you want to mount this volume in your container. I'll type /app, okay, and I'll give space and then type nginx image. So what will this command do? First of all, it's gonna create a container for us, and secondly, it's gonna mount this volume we've created. It's gonna mount it in this directory /app in the container directory, so that all the data that our application will generate, all right, will be secured. So I'll press enter, and this container has been created. Verify docker ps, press enter. So you can see my container is running. So how do I verify to ensure that this has been mounted correctly? I can use docker inspect command, inspect, and I'm gonna copy this container ID. Once I copy the container ID, paste it here, press enter, and actually have a bunch of information. So if I scroll up, so this will list all the information about this container: the ID, the date it was created, the path, the argument, the state, the image, and everything. So I'm actually interested in seeing the mount section, so checking that. Okay, so this is it here. So to explain all this, first of all, the type of this mount is volume. All right, so I didn't specify volume in our run command because by default the mount type is volume. Okay, so the name is the name of our volume is demo volume, and that is what we have here. And then the source field here specifies the directory on the host machine where the volumes data is stored. So this is the directory on our host machine. So inside this volume here, I showed you how we access here, right? So there is a volume inside the var-lib docker directory, and inside this volume folder we'll have this volume we've created, and inside the volume we'll have our data. Okay, so the destination where we mounted this volume is inside /app, and this is on our container, or rather in our container. Okay, so the destination field specifies the directory inside the container where the volume is mounted. The driver here is basically the volume driver that is being used, that is local. The mode is the mode specifies the file field or the file mode, okay, for the mount. And then this RW is read write. By default, the files in your container is in read write mode, so you can see it's set to true. And this propagation specifies the propagation mode for the mount. So this is all. This is it. This is what we've done. So what will happen now? Henceforth, all the data that is being generated in our container in this location, because we've mounted our volume, right, all the data generated here will persist. Okay, so even when our container is gone, maybe deleted or stopped or crashed, we'll be rest assured that our data is secured. So we can go ahead and back up our data or restore it or share it between multiple containers. All right, so let me go back and clear my screen. You can also inspect your volume by running dockervolume inspect. Then you give the volume name. Okay, so this will show you. You can see the mount point is the same. It is the same as we saw it in the container. All right, so this is it. This is just the way you can mount your volume to your container directory. Now I'm gonna demonstrate how to use bindmounts in Docker. I'm gonna clear this. So first of all, remember the goal or the purpose why you might want to use a bindmount in Docker. Okay, so take for instance you have a file already in your host machine, or you might want your container to have access to that file, probably a configuration data that you want your container to access. It might be a JSON file or whatever. Okay, but you have the file in your directories or in your host machine, right? It might also be an external storage, and you want to mount this to your container. You want your container to have access to this. So when you have when a read or a write is made in your container directory, you want it to be reflected on the host machine. All right, so we basically want them to be in sync. I'm gonna show this in a moment on how we can implement that. Okay, so right now we are not talking about this location. we're not talking about this location. We'll assume we have a directory here, or I'm gonna start by creating a directory basically. So after creating the directory, we have a file inside the directory, and then I'm gonna go ahead to create a container and show you how I mount this in our container. And at the end of the day, I'm gonna show you I'm gonna make a modification inside my container to show you how this can be reflected in the host machine. Okay, it's not a long process, so let's start. Mkdir, I'll call this my data. All right, so this is ready, and the next thing I'd like to do is to create a file and my content with echo command. So echo hello world, and I'd like it to be stored in this location, which is my data folder, and then the name of this file, I would like it to be my data.txt, and I'll press enter. Okay, so let me switch directory to this folder. All right, cat my data.txt to confirm my content, and this is it, hello world. Okay, so let me go back to my home directory. All right, so the next step here is to run our Docker container and then do the mounting. All right, so first of all, I'm gonna type docker run command, similar to what we did earlier, right? So docker run -d to run in a detached mode. You can as well run this in interactive terminal to take you inside the container once it is created. So the next command here is mount. Okay, so this time I'm gonna specify the type because we are using a bind mount. So I'm gonna type equals to bind, right? And I'm not gonna give any space. I'll type comma, and then source is equals to, so this time around you're going to specify your absolute path. Okay, the absolute path, this is the absolute path. So I was in my root directory, and then I created this folder. Okay, so this is what I want to mount to my container directory, right? So I'll type the root. If you are in doubt, you can actually run pwd to see the path, but my own is root, and this, so this is the absolute path. If you don't get this right, you will get error. All right, I'll type comma, there is no space, I'll type comma, and then I'm gonna specify the, okay, sorry, this should not be here. Okay, and now I'm gonna type target. So target, I'll specify the directory where I want to mount this in my container. So I will use /app/data. Okay, and I'll give space and type nginx. I want to use nginx email, and I will tag it latest. All right, so this is not really the it's similar to what the command we used earlier. It's just that this time we are, you know, giving the type of the mount as bind, and we are using absolute path here. All right, so this command will create our container, our nginx container that is based on nginx image, right? And then it will bind or mount this directory to this directory in the container. I'll go ahead and press enter, and this container has been created for us, docker ps, right? So this container has been created 5 seconds ago. So the next thing I'll do is to use docker exec command to log into this container. So docker exec -it to open up in interactive terminal, and I'm gonna copy this container, this container ID, so I can go into the container. So paste it here, and I'll use bin, I'll use this shell. Okay, press enter All right, you can see I'm now in interactive terminal. I'm inside my container right now. So what I basically want to do is to verify that this has been mounted correctly, and as well make a modification and then show you how this will be reflected immediately in the host machine or in the host directory. Okay, so first of all, ls, you can see the app directory as we have it here. So I want to check if we have this data inside the app. So to check that, you can actually use cd command to go inside it. So app / data. Okay, ls, you can see this is the file. This is the file we created in the host machine. It is here, and let's verify that is the same content. So cd cat my data.txt, and you can see hello world. All right, so let me go ahead and modify this. This just to demonstrate that if you make modification in this file, in this directory, it will be reflected. So it's just like that in sync, right? So if something happened to this container tomorrow, be rest assured that you will have the same file or the same data in your host machine. So echo, we are making progress. All right, and save it in this file, my data.txt. Press enter. Great. Just confirm that cat my data.txt, press enter. We are making progress. Okay, so right now I'm gonna exit by typing exit to leave my container, and now I'm in the host. I'm back to the host. All right, so I want to show you that the change I just made in the container will be shown here in my data directory. So cd ls, so cat my data.txt, and you can see we are making progress. Great. So this is it. This is how to basically use bind mount to persist data in your container. All right, so to summarize what we've done, in a volume mount that I showed you earlier, the data is stored in a separate volume outside the containers file system managed by Docker. Okay, so this means that the data can persist even after the container is deleted and can be shared among multiple containers. In this bind mount I just showed you, the data is stored on the host machine. All right, and is mounted onto the container, or it is mounted in the container. So this means that the changes made to the data are immediately visible, as I just showed you. They are immediately visible on the host file system and vice versa. All right, so bind mounts are useful for providing access to files or directories on the host machine, or for sharing data between host system and the container. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for your patience and sticking to the end of this video. Thank you so much. Please, if you have any question, don't hesitate to ask the question in the comment section. I'll be right there to answer your questions. And please, if you're yet to subscribe to this channel, kindly subscribe and click on notification bell so you don't miss out, because I actually have a lot to share with you guys. And if you want to learn DevOps in a simplified way, if you want to learn DevOps without confusion, if you want to learn cloud computing, please stick to this channel. I also run trainings. All right, so if you need training, you can actually use my link. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, or go ahead to send me an email. Once you go to my profile in this channel, you will get my information to connect. Okay, thank you so much. I'm gonna see you in my next video. Thank you and bye.